In terms of probabilities, therefore, you choose certain acts, unconsciously transform these into physical events or objects, and then perceive them. But those unchosen events also go out from you and are projected into these other forms. Now the behavior of atoms and molecules is involved here, for again, these are only present within your universe during certain stages. Their activity is perceived only during the range of particular vibratory rhythms. When your scientists examine them, for example, they do not examine the nature, say, of an atom. They only explore the characteristics of an atom as it acts or shows itself within your system. Its greater reality completely escapes them. You understand that there are spectrums of light. So are there spectrums of matter. Your system of physical reality is not dense in comparison with some others. The dimensions that you give to physical matter barely began to hint at the varieties of dimensions possible. Some systems are far heavier or lighter than your own, though this may not involve weight in the terms with which you are familiar. Probable actions emerge, then, into matter systems quite as valid as your own and quite as consistent. You are used to thinking in single-line thoughts, so you think of events that you know as complete things or actions, not realizing that what you perceive is but a fraction of their entire multidimensional existence. In greater terms, it is impossible to separate one physical event from the probable events, for these are all dimensions of one action. It is basically impossible to separate the you that you know from the probable yous of which you are unaware, for the same reasons. There are always inner pathways, however, leading between probable events, since all of them are manifestations of an act in its becoming. Then the dimensions between these are illusions. The physical brain alone cannot pick up these connections with any great success. The mind, which is the inner counterpart of the brain, can at times perceive the far greater dimensions of any given event through a burst of sudden intuition or comprehension that cannot be adequately described on a verbal level. As I have said frequently, time as you think of it does not exist, yet in your terms, time's true nature could be understood if the basic nature of the atom was ever made known to you. In one way, an atom could be compared to a microsecond. It seems as if an atom exists steadily for a certain amount of time. Instead, it phases in and out, so to speak. It fluctuates in a highly predictable pattern and rhythm. It can be perceived within your system only at certain points in this fluctuation. So it seems to scientists that the atom is steadily present. They are not aware of any gaps of absence as far as the atom is concerned. In those periods of non-physical projection, the off periods of fluctuation, the atoms appear in another system of reality. In that system, they are perceived in what are own points of fluctuation, and in that system also, then the atoms appear steadily. There are many such points of fluctuation, but your system, of course, is not aware of them, nor of the ultimate actions, universes, and systems that exist within them. Now, the same sort of behavior occurs on a deep, basic, secret, and unexplored psychological level. The physically oriented consciousness, responding to one phase of the atom's activity, comes alive and awake to its particular existence. But in between are other fluctuations in which consciousness is focused upon entirely different systems of reality, each of these coming awake and responding, and each one having no sense of absence and memory only of those particular fluctuations to which they respond. These fluctuations are actually simultaneous. It would seem to you as if there would be gaps between the fluctuations, and the description I have used is the best one for our purposes, but the probable systems all exist simultaneously, And basically, following this discussion, the atom is in all these other systems at one time. Now, we have been speaking in terms of fantastically swift pulses or fluctuations, so smooth and brief that you do not notice them. But there are also slower, more vast, longer fluctuations from your end of the scale. These affect entirely different systems of existence that are closely connected with your own. The experience of such kinds of consciousness is highly alien to you. One such fluctuation might take several thousands of your years, for example. These several thousand years would be experienced, say, as a second of your time, with the events occurring within it perceived simply as a present period. Now, the consciousness of such beings would also contain the consciousness of large numbers of probable selves and systems, experienced quite vividly and clearly as multiple presents. These multiple presents can be altered at any of an actual number of infinite points, infinity not existing in terms of one indefinite line, but in terms of numberless probabilities and possible combinations growing out of each act of consciousness. Such beings, with their multiple presents, may or may not be aware of your particular system. Their multiple presents may or may not include it. You may be a part of their multiple presents without even being aware of it. In much more limited terms, your probable realities are multiple presents. The image, for an analogy, of an I, EYE, within an I, endlessly repeated, may be useful here. And thus I came to the end of another chapter. The next chapter is chapter 17, and it is called Probabilities, the Nature of Good and Evil, and Religious Symbolism. Christian dogma speaks of the ascension of Christ, implying of course a vertical ascent into the heavens, and the development of the soul is often discussed in terms of direction. To progress is supposedly to ascend, while the horror of religious punishment, hell, is seen at the bottom of all things. Development is therefore considered in a one-line direction only, in Christian terms. Seldom, for example, is it thought of in horizontal terms. The idea of evolution, in its popular meaning, promulgated this theory, as though gradual progression in a one-line direction, man emerged from the ape. Christ could just as well have disappeared sideways. The inner reality of the message was told in terms that man at the time could understand, in line with his root assumptions. Development unfolds in all directions. The soul is not ascending a series of stairs, each one representing a new and higher point of development. Instead, the soul stands at the center of itself, exploring, extending its capabilities, its capacities in all directions at once. Involved in issues of creativity, each one highly legitimate. The probable system of reality opens up the nature of the soul to you. It should change current religion's ideas considerably. For this reason, the nature of good and evil is a highly important point.